Hey Paula and all you ladies out there in the Philadelphia community. I am so happy that you could join me today because we are going to be making one of my favorite recipes. My husband and I love to entertain on the weekends, and one of my favorite meals to entertain with and have people over for is brunch. Brunch is just one of those really casual, laid-back events, and the food is usually a combination of something sweet, something savory, so there's a little bit in there for everybody. And that is exactly what this dish is. I love to start people off with a little something sweet, but I decided to actually do a combination of sweet and savory for this particular starter. And I call this my Monte Cristo Beignet. Now this particular recipe is very simple. We have 6 ingredients, 7 if you consider my garnishes, but basically we are going to use Philadelphia cream cheese for our filling, along with a little bit of Dijon mustard, some chopped ham, because those are ingredients that are usually found in a Monte Cristo sandwich. I've got some store-bought pastry dough. This is basically a roll of crescent rolls that you might serve for dinner. I've just let it come to room temperature, put it into a ball, and then we are simply going to, once it's done, dust it with some powdered sugar and sprinkle it with a little glaze of preserves. So come with me and let's get cooking. Okay ladies, so over here in a pot I am heating up the oil that we're going to use to fry these beignets, and while that's heating, let's go ahead and make our filling. Now what I've got here is about 2.5 ounces of deli ham, just basic store-bought, use your favorite, and we're going to give that a rough chop. Go ahead. Doesn't have to be perfect. Just very quick, because we're going to process a little bit of this with the filling, and then we're going to put the rest of it and just stir it in to give it a little bit of texture when you take that bite. Alright, so we're good. So let's go over here to our food processor and start putting in our ingredients. I've got 4 ounces of Philly cream cheese. I tend to always use the 1/3 less fat, but you can use whichever you prefer. Then we're going to add to that a tablespoon of Dijon mustard. And we're going to put in half of our chopped ham. Okay. And let's pulse this, get it going. I'm not going to talk during this part because I'll have to yell over it. You can see it's getting nice and smooth. I'm going to add a little cracked black pepper to it, one of my favorite ingredients. One more pulse. Alright, now let's take this piece of it out. I'm going to get all that goodness in there. And simply just going to use the same bowl here. I'm going to stir in the rest of my ham. Real quick. Okay. And that is pretty much done. Now we're just going to put this into our pastry bag. Now I normally just try to use my pastry bag with my hands, but oddly enough, Paula made these deviled eggs the other day and had this ingenious way of putting this mixture into her bag. So I stole the idea, borrowed it. Alright, so let's go ahead and get this into our pastry bag. My spoon. Sometimes a little bit harder than what that looks like. Alright. One more. I want to make sure I get all of this goodness in there. Every last bit of it. Scrape my bowl. Probably just covered my face with that. Alright. And there we go. Okay, so now we are ready with our filling. Alright ladies, let's fry up these beignets. So I mentioned I've got my oil heating and I'm going to test it because we want it right around 350 degrees. If it's if it's too hot, obviously you're going to burn your beignet. But if it's not hot enough, they're going to be greasy and you're just not going to get that flaky texture on the outside, and that's what you want. The inside nice and fluffy with a flaky texture on the outside. So this is about perfect. And I'm going to go ahead and let's get started. We're going to just drop these in one at a time. You'll see that they'll rise. I'm going to do about half the batch. So we're going to put in 8. It's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right. You want to keep an eye on them because they're going to brown quick. They don't necessarily flip over on their own. So once they get a nice golden brown on one side, you want to flip them to the other. It's probably going to take about 3 minutes total to get the consistency you want, to make sure the middle's done and then the outside isn't too brown. So we'll check on these. And you can see they're already starting to brown up nicely. Now the reason that I called this a Monte Cristo beignet is because I live here in Los Angeles, California now, but I am a Southern Louisiana girl at heart. I was born and raised in Louisiana, and every time we go back home to New Orleans, I always make sure that we have, on one of my days there, a big plate of beignets and a nice cup of cafe au lait. It is one of the best treats that you could give yourself. And for those who, I think maybe most people have heard of beignets by now, but if not, it's just, they're usually these tasty little pastries. They're squares, and it's just a very simple fried donut that once they are done and piping hot out of the grease, they sprinkle them with mounds of powdered sugar. So you get really messy. You can't be very ladylike and eat this dish. You end up with stuff all over you, and kids have fun with them, but they really are delicious. So these look like they are pretty much starting to finish up. I'm going to flip them one more time. Just make sure they're golden on all sides. Okay, ladies, let's go ahead and finish this dish up so we can start eating, because these are so good, and I promise you will not be able to eat just one of these. So actually, you might want to double up the recipe so you have enough for seconds and thirds for everybody, because they are delicious. So let me just show you. Let's go ahead and get started on filling these donuts. All right, so basically, it's very simple. Got our pastry bag. Gonna poke a hole in it and squeeze. You want to make sure you get a generous amount in there, and we'll just start placing these on our serving tray. It is a very simple recipe. Doesn't take very long to make, and yet it's very creative. I love the idea that when people see it, they really think, hey, I'm just going to have, these are powdered donuts, and then you just get that surprise, and it is so delicious, and it's so much fun. You serve these up with some coffee and a little bit of Kahlua, or maybe Irish coffee with some whiskey, or if you don't drink, just coffee. But they are really, really good. Perfect starter to your meal. We've got our lovely, beautiful plate of beignets here, and all we're going to do to finish this up now, I'm going to sprinkle it generously with some powdered sugar. I'm going to get a nice big amount on there. And I'm going to drizzle. All this is some preserves, seedless preserves that I happen to have in my fridge. This flavor happens to be strawberry. You can use whatever is in your refrigerator in your home, or whatever your preference is, to garnish this. It's very simple. So I'm just going to get my spoon. I just heated it up in the microwave for a few seconds just to get it all nice and liquidy, and drizzle that generously over the top. Make sure that you get some on every one of those, because the preserves really give it that little something extra when it mixes with the tangy bite of that cream cheese filling. There's your dish, Monte Cristo Beignets. So good, such a tasty little starter to your brunch. I hope you guys go out there, try this, and enjoy it. Thanks for joining me.